This man has been injected with a dangerous drug, and in order to survive, he must constantly experience excitement, fear and pain. This is the movie Crank. Let's go! A man named Chef Kelios runs around his house in panic and finds a disc with a recording showing the criminal Ricky Verona bragging about breaking into his house at night, knocking him out and injecting him with some dangerous drug that suppresses adrenaline production and slows down his heart. Kelios can barely move or breathe. He has approximately 1 hour left to live. This is revenge for eliminating a local mobster named Don Kim. After finding the recording, Kelios screams violently, smashes the TV and destroys everything in his house, goes down to the underground parking garage and steals someone's car. He rushes through the city at breakneck speed, which stimulates the production of adrenaline. Kelios calls his girlfriend Eve, but she is not at home. Then the protagonist tries to call his friend Dr. Miles, but he doesn't answer the phone either. Kelios' adrenaline level drops, his heart beats slower and slower, and the man is about to lose consciousness. Realizing this, he presses the gas pedal and calls another friend Kylo, demanding that he urgently finds Ricky Verona. Kelios arrives at a local underground club and threatens one of its owners with a gun. He wants to find the goddamn Verona as soon as possible. A crowd of armed men bursts into the room and a serious showdown ensues. The club owner assures Kelios that he doesn't work with Verona. When everyone calms down, the protagonist again feels that his level of adrenaline has dropped and asks for some illegal substances. After that, his heart starts beating faster, yet the powder doesn't last long, and Kelios intentionally gets into a fight to increase the adrenaline level. Soon he flies out of the club along with the door and fights off his rivals with a bat before driving away in a stolen car. Kelios' cell phone rings. It's Ricky Verona, who can't understand why the protagonist is still alive and threatens to kill his girlfriend. At this moment, the police start chasing Kelios, and he rushes through the shopping center, scaring away visitors and destroying everything on his way. The man receives another call. It's Dr. Miles. Kelios describes the symptoms to him, and the man explains that the drug is called Beijing cocktail. In order to survive, you have to keep your adrenaline level high. For that, you need to be excited and do some dangerous activities. If you stop, you will die. Upon hearing these words, Kelios immediately runs through the mall. He gets into a cab and realizes that he is getting worse. The main character asks the driver to turn up the music to full volume and dances in the car. After getting out of the car, the man robs the nearest store. He needs energy drinks in a huge quantity. Drinking one of them, Kelios calls his friend Eve one more time, but she doesn't respond again. Fueled with energy drinks, Kelios asks a cab driver to take him to Beverly Hills. There he visits the penthouse of an influential mafia boss named Carlito. Meanwhile, he and his business colleagues are having fun with pretty girls. Carlito dives into the pool and meets Kelios underwater. The protagonist asks the gangster for help, but he states that the situation is hopeless, there is no antidote, and in general, he does not want to interfere in their squabble. Enraged, Kelios leaves Carlito's penthouse and decides to find Verona on his own. He throws the cab driver out of the car and gets behind the wheel personally. The man drives at breakneck speed with an energy drink in his hand. Dr. Miles calls him again and reminds him that only excitement, fear and a sense of danger can prolong Kelios' life. However, he could also inject himself with epinephrine, a synthetic adrenaline. After that, he gets a call from Kylo. The latter sees Verona's brother in the restaurant called Prince, and the main character immediately rushes there. The gangster notices the man and tries to run away, but Kelios catches up with him and uses the cleaver he took from the kitchen. But the mobster turns out to be a good fighter and knocks Kelios down. Kylo rushes to his aid with a rolling pin. While the thug is trying to get rid of the second opponent, the protagonist fires a bullet at him. Then he searches his body and takes the cell phone. Kelios calls Verona and informs him that he doesn't have a brother anymore. The bandit gets furious and threatens to take a cruel revenge for his relative. The protagonist rushes to the drugstore and forces the medics to give him epinephrine. but obviously he gets refused. One of the men in line advises Kilios to use special nasal drops. Supposedly, they have a similar effect. The man grabs several bottles at once. The guards immediately start chasing him. Kilios hides in one of the hospital rooms and looks at the old bedridden patient with interest. When the guards check the room, they don't notice anything suspicious. Fortunately, the man had enough time to hide. He leaves the ward wearing a hospital gown and, noticing the guards, runs down the corridor and stares, threatening with a weapon. The main character demands one of the medics to give him epinephrine, and when the latter finds the required ampules, he forces the doctor to use a defibrillator. Because of the discharge, Kilios flies a few meters straight into an open elevator and flees from the armed guards. His heart beats slower and slower, so he urgently injects himself with epinephrine. The man doesn't remember the exact dosage and apparently injects a double or even triple dose. He runs around the city in a hospital gown, scaring birds and random passerby. Dr. Miles calls him and advises the man to take another drug. Running through the streets, Kilios notices that the cops are looking for him everywhere. He takes away a gun from one of the cops and steals his bike. The man performs some extreme driving skills. His phone rings again. It's Eve, who turns out to have been sleeping all day. Kilios gets on the bike and rushes to his beloved to get there before Verona. At this time, the mobster mourns the loss of his brother and heads to Eve's place to kidnap her. Someone rings the doorbell at the girl's apartment. Luckily, it's Kilios. He's no longer wearing a gown but a tracksuit. The man asks Eve to dress up and urgently leave with him. The protagonist feels his adrenaline level dropping again, so he purposely burns his hand in the waffle iron and screams wildly in pain. Well, it works. Kilios is back to normal. Looking out of the window, the man spots Verona's gangsters. While the girl turns off the waffle iron and answers the phone, the main character runs outdoors and knocks out one of the criminals. Unnoticed by Eve, he manages to deal with another villain and takes the girl to Chinatown. During lunch, Kilios confesses that he is a hitman, working for a crime syndicate headed by Mafia Don Carlito. Yesterday, he was fulfilling another assignment and had to eliminate Mafia Don Kim, as he was interfering with Carlito's business. Kilios broke into the mobster's house, but instead of taking his life, he ordered the criminal to leave the city for 2 days. Yet, it was not out of kindness. Actually, the protagonist decided to quit his dangerous and illegal work. However, Eve doesn't trust him and thinks this is just an excuse to break up with her, and that's when Kilios' adrenaline level drops again. The man asks his beloved to help him and tries to take off her dress, for which he immediately gets punched in the face. Nevertheless, he proves to be persistent and gets what he wants. During this process, he even manages to answer a phone call from Kylo, who reports that he has found Verona. According to his friend, the mobster is at Don Kim's sewing factory. Alas, in fact, Kylo was kidnapped by Carlito's people, who forced him to call Kilios. After the conversation, the poor man is sent to the other world. The protagonist is not aware of this, so he immediately leaves Eve and goes to the sewing factory. The cab driver offers some kind of an interesting substance, and he takes another strange drug without a second thought. After arriving at the place, Kilios goes to the roof and sees one of Carlito's henchmen. Having dealt with him, he goes downstairs and sees several gangsters there, as well as the body of his friend. The man realizes that Verona is not here, and it was Carlito who ordered to lure and eliminate him. All of a sudden, Eve appears at the factory. The gangsters are confused, and taking advantage of the moment, Kilios eliminates them one by one using Kylo's body as a shield. Then he and Eve hide from another hitman in the sewing room. Kilios manages to catch his rival off guard and shoves his hand under the needle of a sewing machine. In the turmoil of the gunfight, the protagonist and his girlfriend manage to run down the fire escape, eliminating several more mobsters. Kilios steals another car, and only then Eve realizes that her boyfriend told her the truth. They are chased by Carlito's people, but the man manages to solve this problem as well. Kelios and Eve go to Dr. Miles, and the latter conducts a full examination of the protagonist, giving him the proper medication. The man admits that he can't cure Kelios, and he will sooner or later go to the other world anyway. In this case, the main character decides to spend the remaining time taking revenge on Verona. Calling him, Kelios arranges an appointment at a hotel in the city center to supposedly get an antidote in exchange for his dead brother's pendant. Kelios heads to the hotel, checks his weapon in the restroom, takes a pill given by Dr. Miles, and immediately sees hallucinations. A couple of bandits lead the protagonist to the roof and take away his weapons. Verona, Carlito, and several other criminals are already waiting for him there. Carlitos takes a syringe filled with the same poison that Verona injected the main character with this morning. He intends to inject Kelios with a second dose and finally get rid of him. At that point, the protagonist makes a finger gun gesture and aims at each thug in turn. When he says boom, one of the criminals falls to the floor with a hole in his forehead. At the same moment, a live and unharmed Don Kim and his people show up to the roof to help Kelios. Instantly, a hellish gunfight ensues, during which several of Don Kim's people and all of Carlitos' men are killed. The hotel is surrounded by police. Carlito attempts to escape by his private helicopter, but Kelios catches up with him and holds him at gunpoint. At that moment, Verona sneaks up behind the protagonist and injects him with the contents of the syringe, causing Kelios to lose coordination and fall. Carlito scolds Verona because it took him that long. After that, the savior immediately shoots several bullets in his chest. Verona tries to escape in the boss's helicopter, using the last of his strength. Kelios gets up and climbs into the helicopter as well. During the violent fight, the main character manages to pull Verona out of the helicopter and snap his neck. They both fall out of the helicopter. During the fall, Kelios calls Eve and apologizes to her for not coming back. The man falls onto the car, bounces off of it, and lands right in front of the camera. We hear 2 beats of his heart. Give this video a like if you also find Statham pretty damn cool, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out the best movie recaps. This was the Movie Cat. I'll see you later.